So obviously something we all talk about a lot is the difference between being a pro and being a semi-pro. And Chris, you've probably spent a lot more time than us as a professional, so do you want to give us a little bit of an insight into what your week would look like as a professional player?
Yeah, it's I mean, I guess as a professional you're training probably 3 or 4 times more a week than semi-pro or NPL level. Pre-seasons are extensive and you're doing double sessions, strength sessions, your rehab, your recovery is intense. You've got to focus on your diet a lot more than playing NPL and sort of doing 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week. But yeah, it's probably just in a nutshell, your fitness is probably 10-15% better than what it is at an NPL level. When you're doing your pre-seasons, your base foundation is intense and you're doing a lot of hard work. Time trials, strength and conditioning work and things like that are a lot more intense. So I think that the fitness level between from my experience, NPL to A-League there's a big gulf in the fitness. Yeah. Where I think you physically, as a pro, you physically have to go to another level to play as a pro in the A-League, as opposed to NPL. You can sort of get away with a little bit like that. And I think you see that where the physical challenges for some players, they can't quite step up to that, and they get those injuries and things like that. So the importance there of the little things like your diet, your rehab, your recovery, your fitness are really important at that higher level.
For your whole life, pretty much.
Effectively, it becomes your whole life is about you eat before training. You've got to eat well after training. You've got to do your rehab. It's your whole lifestyle's around your football, and even when game days. My wife would have to go out with the kids in the afternoon, and so I could eat exactly 5 hours before a game. I'd have to get an hour's sleep in. Yeah. I'd have to have a certain amount of hydration, where people might think that's over the top, but I needed to do that to be at the level. I needed to be there. So and she was aware of that, and she became comfortable with it. So it was
when you're in living for me. And Conor, you're obviously a bit of an NPL veteran, which is semi-pro, even though you're on full-time money. What would your week look like with training and then combining that with work?
It's quite full on really, especially Tuesdays and Thursdays. I leave the house at 8:30 and I won't get back in until probably 10:30 at night. So we'll come in the office, do a bit, and then obviously we'll go coaching from 3 till 6 and then straight till training 7 till 9. So I like it because I like staying busy and try and fit the gym in when I can. But it is a busy week.
Yeah, and obviously Chris mentioned all of the extra things you do as a pro, because that's all you do. But I think the hard thing for a semi-pro is trying to juggle everything, isn't it? Because you obviously have to earn a living from your day job, but as aspiring or semi-pro football players, you want to still perform to the highest level you can. So I think that's where the battle comes in of how much time do you put to extra training, or how much time can you put to that, but also thinking about your career, which is obviously your bread and butter as well. How did you find it when you...
it was I found sort of going down to the NPL level a challenge, because the fitness levels were slightly lower, the ability with the team as a whole and individual players was a little bit less, so I found the gameplay a bit different, where there was a lot more transition in the game, where your fitness had to still be at a high level because you were constantly getting up, dropping back, and that transition was there. So where at a higher level you can keep the ball longer, you can keep it in the final third. It's you've got players that are good pros, experienced, and you can take time needed where you need to take it. Where NPL, it was just all sort of hectic. But I mean, from a training point of view, I always found that only doing sort of 2, maybe 3 nights a week, my focus for that time when I was at training was to work as hard as I possibly could and push players around me as hard as I could to get the most out of those limited sessions that I had. I was a little bit older as well when I finished, but I still tried to maintain that recovery where I could stretch, after sessions, really take the time to stretch, do that sort of rehab, and I think the older I got, the more I sort of tried to look after my body so I could get more out of it. So, but my focus there with the less sessions was to work really hard and get the most out of it, and push the boys.
How did you adapt to like the change in mentality from going full-time to part-time with the group?
Well, for me, I was older, so you sort of, the older players generally have those, you know, that leadership in them and that experience. So coming in with younger boys, things like that.
Showing up late and things.
Yeah, well that's, you know, as an experienced player, you try and push them to lift their standards a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, we had some success at Palm Beach winning the league there, and we had a really good young group. Players like Owen Murphy were coming in, Nick Merkovich, Riley, things like that. Young boys, Chris Lucas, could bang goals away. We really sort of had a good group, but I think as an experienced player, you know, we had Carl Dodd who came in as well. We sort of tried to get a group together, and Carl took it upon himself as well to really sort of try and lead the group and push them, and you know, I think we sort of showed that we could do that, and we sort of made some achievements. It was good.
That's what you're trying to do on 38 now, isn't it?
That's it, keep going.
Leadership
Trying to get the group together.
Yeah.
It's hard with young players like you around. Get a bit of a cold, you don't want to go training. And what about you, Conor? You had a couple of years pro at Fleetwood, and obviously then went straight into semi-pro in England. What was the biggest differences you found from going from one to another?
Because I was so young, I found going from full-time football at Fleetwood, but I hadn't played first team yet, so it was all sort of like pretty nice football on really nice pitches and set formations and playing out from the back, and then I obviously got through into part-time men's football. It's just like, wow, what is going on? So I was struggling to even get a start in a team, whereas I'd been a professional 3 months before.
Yeah.
And my world came crashing down a bit, so I had to realise quite quickly that this is the level I'm at now, so I had to adapt and get used to a different style of play, and definitely the physicality was the biggest eye-opener for me because I hadn't really seen it yet. I'd been out on loan but not for long, so yeah, definitely playing against men who want to win and things like that, as opposed to just playing every week at Fleetwood under 23s where results don't really matter.
Yeah. No, I think that's the biggest thing. When I got released from Swindon and went straight to Basingstoke, you probably underestimate what a good standard in the UK, especially semi-pro level, is, because there's so many players that have dropped down from, you know, the higher leagues, being professionals, into those leagues that are still earning good money, but obviously combine that with working, and you do get a bit of a fright. You're like, wow, this isn't as easy as I thought. I'm not going to get my own way here, and as you said, people want to win, but I think the biggest difference for me was when I went to training with Basingstoke, and there was that element of the boys having a bit of a laugh in the warm-up. I was like, what's going on here? Whereas, you know, the professional club, it's your job, it's what you do, and 100% of the time when you're training, it's serious. So, and I think it's just getting used to that being a bit more laid back during training, something to get your head around a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you noticed much with the difference with the approach to training?
I mean, I think, you know, that discipline was always at a high level, playing professionally, where, you know, it was almost expected that you would get there an hour before training and do prehab and get prepared, stretching and things like that, where a lot of boys at, you know, that NPL level would be rocking up straight after work, which was hard. So it's hard to drive those things about starting on time and doing prehab and things like that. So that was some of the challenges with that. Sort of, you know, I guess it's funny what you're saying about, you know, young boys and being in that atmosphere. I think a lot of boys that have success when they're younger, they might be training with academies, and at that high level they can almost take for granted what they've got. I think it really needs to be appreciated, the standard they're at, and you know, if they get released, you know, if they're not putting in and they get released, it's a big knock for them to get released. I got released from Adelaide after a couple of years in the A-League, and that was just, I'd never come across it, and I was sort of like, what am I going to do? And it's just a real wake-up call. So I think it's really important, young boys that do, you know, come through academies and do well, never take for granted what they've got, because getting into a men's team is massive, as opposed to just coming through the ranks. It's a massive challenge, and men will be in their team, and a young boy will come in for a trial, and they're looking to take their job, and the men are just going to go.
That's what.
They're going to cop it. So it's a big wake up call, and you never ever take for granted what you've got. I think the mentality's got to be really to keep pushing.
Yeah. And I think that's a big point as well, because obviously a lot of people see the glitz and glam of the high level pros in the Premiership, La Liga and everything like that, where they're earning mega bucks, but the reality is the massive percentage of players are on 1 or 2 year contracts that are actually fighting for their livelihood. It's not just going to earn a few $100s extra because they're a tradie during the day and earning a good wage. It's more of, this is my life, I needed to pay my mortgage, to pay my bills and to feed my family kind of thing. And I guess that's the hard part of being a pro, isn't it? And it's not just the glitz and glamour, it's actually I need to perform, I need to stay injury free, I need to I need to be accountable, because otherwise I'm out of work essentially. And I think that's probably the plus of being semi-pro, is that we're not completely reliant on it, which sometimes can help your performance because you play with a bit more freedom. I know as soon as I sort of got to the stage where I realised I probably wasn't going to get to the level as a player and be professional that I wanted to, I probably started to enjoy my football a little bit more and take it for what it is, in terms of obviously keeping me fit, the social aspect, and obviously from a competitive side as well. But I think being a pro, it's tough in lots of ways, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, one big thing that I always look back on now is that the lows as a footballer are really, really low, like getting released, being injured, getting dropped and not being able to make a team. But the highs are extremely high, winning leagues, winning a game in front of thousands of people, scoring a late winner. The highs are just unbelievably high, but the lows are, you can reach rock bottom. Even coming through, trialling, trying to get in as a pro and things like that, you have senior players there on your case every session. And I remember trying to break in the National League in Adelaide City. I remember the experienced pros getting stuck into me, and I would be driving to training like, I don't know if I want to go to training, and the mentality was a challenge, and you just really have to grind so hard to get through it. So that's an ongoing challenge, I think, for young boys. Really,
I think that helped you though in the long run.
Yeah, well, I eventually
understood.
But my mentality was to continue working hard, work. And for young players, other boys would fall off the radar, and then if you continue to work, you slowly improve, but you don't realise you're improving, and then you gain that respect of the senior players, and then you're in. But you don't see it while it's happening. But if you continue to work, grind, you'll improve. But it's that mental side where boys can fall over, and it's a massive challenge. But if you can break through that, the rewards are there. But it's at the time when you're trying, it's challenging. But that creates a character, and if you can gain that strength, that holds you in good stead moving forward. So.
And do you think dropping down to semi-pro for that period when you were young in your career made you more resilient, and it made you more appreciative of it when you went back into the program? Yeah,
I mean, I always loved playing professionally, and I look back and I don't really think I took things for granted, as I loved going to training. I loved training more than anything. The only thing I sort of regret, if anything, when I was younger, is probably drinking a bit too much, going out a bit too much, where I could look back and go, I probably shouldn't have done as much of that. Could I have gone out a little bit further? Possibly not. But I always loved, I enjoyed it, and there was nothing more I wanted to do. So it was just dropping back down. That was a massive challenge, but you've got to have that strength of character to go, no, I'm still gonna. I'm going to do that more. So, dropping that back down years ago, that drove me to push harder again. So I had to do my own work, I had to go do my own training. And it was sort of like I wouldn't accept that I wasn't going to try and push back on and progress. But that's in the person, in the character to be able to do that. But it is tough to drop back down and then back up. But again, if you really want to do it, you have to.
Sacrifice.
You got to sacrifice and push. So it's fun.
Yeah, and I guess something else we always talk about, we're talking more from a player's perspective there, but is the difference between coaching at pro level and you've experienced coaching at NPL level, and what you can expect from the two types of players. From a professional point of view, we talked about that. It's their livelihood, so there probably is accountability on them to train well and their attitudes be spot on all the time. But I guess the biggest thing we talk about a lot of the time with different coaches at NPL level that have aspirations to themselves get to professional teams that are actually managing semi-pro players that probably realise they're not going to go any higher is how do they manage their expectations, how do they manage the players have got work, family outside of actually playing, and they haven't got that time to give 100% to playing. So what do you think about the balancing act with that?
Well, again, I think coaching at a semi-pro level is extremely different to coaching at an A-League level. A-League, you've got the players there, they've got to be pros, they're getting paid, they're expected to be there on time. You can have demands on them that a coach at an NPL level can't have.
Yeah.
So there's those challenges there. Now you've got the challenges there where, players coming through, if there's a smaller talent pool, say on the Gold Coast, for example, you've got local clubs that are paying high amounts of money for players that, that we're going to play at a lower level when they could be playing NPL. So it's hard at that level. So, I mean, people's philosophies are different, but mine at an NPL level is, you've got a base of, experienced players, but then I believe that you should be having young players coming through the system, your SAPs through the academies and bringing them through. So it's tough in what environment you're in what area you're in. For Gold Coast United example, a lot of the good players that are coming through the academies go to the Raw academies and things like that, where the argument could be, well, we want to keep them here to develop them to bring them to the first team. And the other argument is, well, if you bring them to the Raw, that's a pathway as well. So what's right or what's wrong? I believe that young players coming through should be thrown into, thrown in the deep end effectively to the men's system, where they learn a lot of skills there from actual men and things like that, as opposed to the academies where they're the same age. But I think there's an argument for both. But it's tough. It's tough at all levels with the semi-pro and pro. But you could debate it for hours on.
Oh yeah, we talk about it all the time, don't we? Because obviously we coach, but not seniors. But we see it from we play for Gold Coast United. Gray's big on the analysis, big on the video and things like that, and he puts so much time into it, which is probably suited to a professional level. Because the reality for us, we get to Thursday night, we're pretty knackered, and sometimes watching videos at 9:30, it's tough, isn't it? But then I think as a player, you appreciate the effort going in from the coach, and so it's all those things to consider. And I know other boys probably just want to get off on a Thursday night, and it's all different types of personalities to deal with, isn't there? And I guess, like you said, there's no right or wrong. It's just everyone's different, and it's trying to find a way to get the best out of your group.
Yeah, and I don't think you can never be critical of a coach who goes over and above the expectations of a semi-pro coach. You've got to respect what they're trying to do. It's I guess for the coach to try and find that balance of players that are coming from work, it's late on a Thursday night.
That's the most important, the balance, understanding your players.
And that's probably an art of coaching, is seeing your players, what they need, how they're responding, as opposed to what you want to try and provide, what's right, what's wrong. I don't think there's a right or wrong, it's just trying to see what your players, how they're responding and what you're trying to do. But I don't think for any coach that's giving a certain amount you could ever go, we don't need this. It's sort of like you can appreciate it and try and take it on board, and then their commitment you can try and match with that on the field and on the training paddock as well. So it's a tough one, but it's good fun.
Yeah, and something we spoke about yesterday, we were talking about like the intensity of training sessions and things like that, and that's something I've always felt, having played for a long time in semi-pros, that when you're at training, I think as a player, my opinion is that there's no reason why, whether you're 35 like me or 25, you can't aspire to continue to be better and to train at a higher level than what you did the week previously. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for me that I see, is people get to semi-pro and they think, oh, that's me done now, I'm just going to sort of rest on my laurels. And I guess that's a bit of frustration from my point of view. It's like, well, we're here for an hour and a half, why don't we actually give everything we can, and then obviously come game day we're going to be better for it. And I think that there's some sloppy mentalities that do creep into semi, even the presentation. We talk about the under 18s, the way they wear their socks and things like that, and the way they present themselves on game day. And you watch Aston Villa, Leeds, the way they present themselves, the way they carry themselves. It's like, well, they're pros, yes, they've got X, Y and Z, but why can't we still regardless of what stage we're at, try and
be like them.
try and be professional when we're there. You know, it doesn't. We might not go home and watch videos until midnight or be able to do all the extra things that pros can, but when you're there, for me, it's like, well, why don't we try and emulate a professional setup with everything that we do? Because that's why, for me, that's why you're there, and that's what creates winning teams.
There's that old saying, it's the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I'm a big believer that you don't actually see yourself improving, but all of a sudden, if you work hard every session ongoing, the game actually gets that little bit easier. And you ask yourself, why does it seem easier? And it's that work that you've put in the session, and you slowly, you slowly improve, and you don't realise you're improving. And I say that to a lot of boys. When you go to training, just work as hard as you can, and you won't even see yourself improving. And they're just, I totally agree. It's when you get to the session, work hard, and in regards to those standards and discipline and things like that, I think as a senior player, that's almost a rite of passage that you need to pass on your knowledge to the younger boys that are in a squad, and those little habits like pulling your socks up, starting on time, getting there on time, doing your prehab, stretching for 15 minutes at the end of the session instead of 2 minutes, and then walking in. They're habits that were passed down to me by senior players, and I think even at NPL level, you've been around, you've played. Conor's been around for a while now. He's becoming a senior player, but they're good things that need to be passed on. And there's so much that a coach can do and try to push on, but it's got to come from within a squad as well to pass those habits on, because those young boys that are coming through, even Gold Coast United and things like that, they don't know. I see boys there that will finish their game before the first team game, and they're in the car and they're off, and for me, the seniors players should be saying, where are you going? Sit around and watch the game. You learn something here, and whether or not they don't want to watch the game or they do, they should know you got to sit there and watch the game. You got to learn. This is the rite of passage. You should sit there. And they're little things, and I think that comes from within the squad and the men's squad, and should be passed on.
I think you're a big example of that. You went away in the off-season last year and did a lot, didn't you? And you came back in sort of a step ahead of everyone else, and I think that showed. And you set the example, and I think you were there as a leader in the team without really knowing it, because you sort of set the tone in pre-season. Everyone like, bloody hell, Conor's looking sharp, and so it shows that just the different mindset and just going a bit extra that you can get a step ahead. And whether you're still playing NPL in 10 years' time, but at least people want to look at you and say, he was a quality player and a good leader and good role model and things like that. So
I think it's finding it within yourself to just keep driving, isn't it? Even like the little things you're saying about, like, when I was younger, I would never leave a training pitch without getting a bit of equipment in. Whereas we see our younger boys and they're straight in, and you've got like poor Johnny Lee pushing goals back and things, with probably Justyn, who's 30 plus, and you've got 18-year-olds straight in the shower. But I think that side of the game's slowly going away, isn't it? That's
I think the hard thing with our level is that sort of that in-between level.
It's a fine line, isn't it? Really fine line.
Maybe some of the young boys, they don't care enough to be bothered about that.
I think it's either they don't care or they don't know. Because some of them are just
a bit of both,
a bit oblivious to why should I be getting the gear in. Whereas me growing up, I would never be able to be in a youth team player, leave the pitch without cleaning balls or getting goals or cones or anything like that.
They're just things that are set in stone it's a rite of passage,
but then you gain the respect of the
that's right. That's right, and then they accept that, and then you can be part of it. But I still think that gets passed down almost generation to generation, where it comes from the senior players. You get the gear, and the young boys sort of gets rattled. But in years to come, they go, "That's the way it works."
Got the value,
so I think that needs to get passed on, and they're good habits that they hold young boys in good stead in the future.
That's good. You might be a professional again one day. You've still got time.
Got Smalty there, my agents.
There you go. He's available, guys.
Hit me up.